Welcome to Headline to Heartline. Some doors once opened should never be knocked on again. Today matters because this is not gossip, it is a gut check. According to The Independent, newly released emails appear to show Sarah Ferguson asking Jeffrey Epstein for financial advice while he was in prison and later asking him for a job. And yes, that is as shocking as it sounds. Today I will explain why Sarah Ferguson asked Epstein to employ her as his house assistant, saying she is the most capable and that she desperately needs the money. What kind of job was she looking for, and what does that choice tell us about judgment, desperation, and the company people keep? For many people, the very idea crosses a line so clearly that the anger is immediate and lasting. As you already know, Sarah Ferguson is the former Duchess of York, a familiar public figure for decades, often in the news for financial troubles and controversy, and Jeffrey Epstein was a wealthy financier who was convicted in 2008 of a sexual offense involving a minor, served a jail sentence, and later became the center of global scandal before dying in custody in 2019. That background is well known, so let us move straight to what is new and why it matters now. The Independent reports that in an email dated July 2009, near the end of Epstein's time in prison, Ferguson appears to write to him about her debt, describing it as demoralizing and saying she felt exhausted. The article says she put her debts at about £6 million. In that same exchange, she appears to ask Epstein what he thinks about a proposed arrangement with British businessman John Caldwell, describing an offer of £10 million in exchange for half of her net profits for life. The Independent reports that Epstein replied with practical advice, telling her to get the offer in writing. Even that first exchange is difficult for many people to accept. It shows a level of trust placed in someone whose conviction was already public knowledge. It is not simply contact, it is reliance. Then comes the part that has drawn the strongest reaction. The Independent reports that in an email dated 16 May 2010, Ferguson appears to ask Epstein to employ her as his house assistant, writing that she is the most capable and that she desperately needs the money. The article also describes further messages later in 2010, where she appears to follow up again about being employed. The tone in those messages is described as warm and familiar. Here is where it's important to pause and keep the facts clear. The Independent notes that being mentioned in released documents or having emails described in them does not by itself prove that a person committed a crime. Emails can reveal tone, relationships, and decisions. They do not automatically establish criminal wrongdoing. That distinction matters, and it is only fair to state it. But it is also fair to acknowledge why so many people react with anger rather than curiosity. For the public, the question is not only legal, it is moral and human. Why seek advice, comfort, or employment from a person already convicted of harming a minor? That is the question that keeps resurfacing, and it is the one that leaves many viewers shaking their heads. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel, and then come right back because the wider context helps explain why this story resonates so deeply. Some observers argue that financial desperation can cloud judgment. People in crisis sometimes grasp at any lifeline, even one that later looks unthinkable. That perspective exists, and it is part of the conversation. Others note that the emails being reported now are years old and that excerpts from documents can intensify the appearance of closeness. Those are points worth hearing because understanding is not the same thing as excusing. And yet, for many people, those explanations do not carry much weight. Plenty of individuals have faced debt, embarrassment, and fear without turning to someone whose record was already so disturbing. That is where the frustration comes from. It is not just the contact itself, it is the sense that the boundary was obvious and that crossing it was a choice. There is also a broader impact beyond any one individual. Stories like this shape how people see institutions, titles, and privilege. When a prominent figure appears to maintain friendly or dependent communication with a convicted sexual offender, it feeds a belief that power can insulate people from consequences. It also raises painful questions about empathy and accountability. The Independent also reports that a spokesperson for John Codwell said he and Ferguson were longtime acquaintances, that he did not know she had consulted Epstein about the offer, and that the proposed transaction ultimately did not go ahead. That reminder is important. It shows how complex these networks of communication can be and how people can become connected to stories without direct involvement. So where does this leave us? It leaves us with a story that is both specific and symbolic. Specific because it involves dated emails and reported wording. Symbolic because it reflects a larger pattern that people feel they have seen before, where poor judgment is repeated until the public no longer feels surprised, only disappointed. If you are listening and feeling that mixture of disbelief and fatigue, you are not alone. There is a certain kind of disappointment that settles in when someone in a position of visibility appears to make a choice that seems so clearly wrong. It is not only about one individual, it is about what those choices say about the circles people move in and the lines they are willing to blur. Thank you for spending this time with me today, and if you want more episodes that slow down the headlines and talk about what they mean in everyday life, please subscribe to the channel and like the video before you go. Goodbye, and may we all learn to step back from doors we already know lead to the wrong rooms.